Mayor, you're all set when you're ready.
Terrific. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for welcoming us into your homes tonight. This meeting is being held in conformance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice has been given to the newspaper. The notice of this meeting has been posted on Town Hall door. And the next open public meeting of this council will be held on March the 18th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Councilman Cannon.
Here.
Councilman Hirsch.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelly. Councilwoman Montone.
Here.
Councilman Swindell.
Here. Here.
Deputy Mayor Martucci.
Here.
Mayor Tagliarini.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome to the Aberdeen Township Council Workshop Meeting for Thursday, March 4th, 2021. We will have a speaker in a little bit of time. And Brian, why don't you lead us up to that?
Sure. Excuse me, Mayor. So workshop, actually, we're just going to make a couple changes here, but even though it's still here right now, the shared service agreement with the Matawan Aberdeen Regional School Board of Education for the use of the school buses. That's our typical resolution that we do for the summer summer camp that we do. But we are going to ask to have that pulled for tonight and pushed to the March, our second meeting in March, because we actually are waiting on the agreement that we will need to put with this. So if we could have that when we go to the regular meeting and just hold that resolution for tonight. Item number 2 is the release of the performance guarantee for block 357 lot 17, which is 323 Sherwood Drive. That's usually not one of our routine resos that we do have, but if there is a question, Anthony, our engineer, is here in case there's a question. And then also, Mayor, and if we could, if there is no questions from council members, I have Mr. Peter Lupo here from Hoplite Consulting, and he is going to give a brief presentation regarding the 5G technology that's starting to roll out throughout New Jersey, and partially of what his company does with the 5G technology. So if anyone has any questions, gladly would entertain them now. Seeing none. If everyone's okay, Mayor, if you're fine with it, I'd like to turn over the presentation time to Mr. Lupo, and I think he needs to put up a presentation on the screen, and we can go forward if you're okay with that.
Terrific. Welcome, Mr. Lupo.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes, so you're loud and clear.
Oh, Brian, there's another person who's trying to get in, who's trying to go ahead. He's going to share the presentation.
Okay, I have nobody in my waiting room just yet, but
or the other one, maybe the other waiting room for the other link.
I only have the one that I up here.
Oh, here it is. It's screen. Okay, here we go. Good.
There you go.
Okay, so everyone, thank you very much for having me here. Brian, thank you very much for making the arrangements for me to be on here. Greatly appreciative. Look forward to giving this presentation. Next slide, Paul. So just a little bit about myself. I'm an attorney. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey. I've been practicing law since 2000, and I've got 20 years experience, 15 of which have been in the wireless industry. I'm personally acquainted with decision makers. I worked on the carrier side for 15 years doing the opposite of what I'm doing now. So I represented the carriers in getting the lowest possible rents. I used to do zoning for the carriers. I also try to find ways of making it easier to get to deploy their networks, often at the cost of the municipality. Now I've taken those 15 years of experience, and I have a practice completely dedicated to working for the municipalities. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick little bit of understanding what 5G is going to bring, what it is, this is kind of important to kind of frame the discussion about what I do. Next slide. So just to let you know, what they're going to be doing is what's called network densification. So right now, the current 4G sites that I'm calling you from, you're probably all using, is a longer bandwidth. 5G is going to be a much more little bandwidth. It's called a nanotechnology. Next slide, Paul. So what's going to happen is you're going to be able to connect many more devices, sensors, you have ubiquitous high-speed connectivity and greater reliability and redundancy. And so this is going to mean that when you're at a sporting event and you start taking video, you want to send it to your husband, your wife, to a loved one, you often find that they crash or it takes forever to do. With 5G, you're going to be able to do that with, with a great more amount of people. You can be at a sporting event and still do that without having your send fail. Next slide. So there's going to be a few ways in which it impacts you. One's going to be physical deployment. The next is going to be the radiation, the emission levels, the legal framework, money for the municipality, and aesthetics. Next slide. Physical deployment. Next slide. So right now, what it looks like is you have 4G. So you have towers, you have rooftops. They're spaced very far apart, and they're in the background. They're in the periphery of our life. When a crew goes out and does maintenance, you don't see them because they're climbing a tower or very far away or on a bucket truck. What they're going to be doing now is going to start doing network densification, which means going to be the public right away. They're going to be putting their small cells or cell sites, instead of on rooftops or in towers, on telephone poles. You're going to have up to 20 number of these sites, and they're going to be right on the roads in which we travel. Next slide. So network densification, 4G, you see those 3 towers? That represents the current network. And 5G, it'll be those existing towers, but all those little towers in between, that's what network densification looks like. Next slide. So what you're going to see now is bucket trucks. This happens to be a picture in near Rutgers in New Brunswick. We're going to have bucket trucks working and operating in the right way that you never had before, on a scale you never had before. There's going to be road closures, lane closures, street closures. Next slide. This is what a typical small cell looks like, and there's a few sprinkled out right now, but no true 5G yet in Monmouth County. So the antennas are going to be mounted on top of a conventional wood utility pole. You have jumper cables that are down there. Then it's going to go to a radio unit at the base, and there's going to be an electrical meter, which the carrier will pay the utility provider at the end of the month. But this is taken at the shore. I think this is maybe near Bradley Beach. But anyway, this is what a small cell site looks like. And this is what you're going to see throughout Aberdeen, roughly a football field apart from each other. Next slide. So what we do at Hoplite, we'll do a bulk and single carrier applications. We'll manage that process. We'll coordinate with the municipal personnel for street closures. We'll make sure that there's a neat orderly workmanship and give an annual report of each site that's installed. And we'll have that plotted out on a GIS website. And I'll show you what that looks like shortly. Next slide. Emission levels. One thing that you're going to find as a municipality is people are going to be very concerned about emission levels. You know, say, hey, the mayor or council member or Mr. Business Administrator, we have a utility pole. We're on a second floor. We're looking directly at the antennas. Are they safe? Next slide, Paul. So there are going to be a lot more antennas. They're going to be about 35 to 40 feet above ground level, and they're going to be right on the public rights of way, right in front of people's houses. Next slide, Paul. To give you what this looks like, we do a 5G mapping over here. This is what we did for Asbury Park, but it'll look very similar to Aberdeen. You see, in the most densely populated areas near the Garden State Parkway, near Route 35, Strathmore, which is where my sister lives. All these areas are going to be densely, going to have the oranges, and then as you get out towards like parks and maybe schools, they'll start going to the light yellows. But this is what a heat map looks like and what's being done for Aberdeen. Next slide, Paul. And what I'm going to do over here, you see a sample of the municipality I'm doing right now. This is in Irvington. They're doing 90 sites in Irvington. I expect that to be more or less to be in Aberdeen as well. And what we do for the members of the public who will invariably call is put up plot out each site that's located there. And every member of the public who's concerned or wants to can click on the website, click on the tower with their street, with their street coordinates or longitude, latitude, get a picture of the utility pole, and then also click and get an FCC health and safety report. It's about 30 pages long. And when you have members of the public call and ask about it, you can refer them to it, they can click on it, and hopefully that'll relieve their concerns. Next slide. And what we do, every time there's an upgraded site, it changes the radiation profile, and we'll make sure we get a health and safety report, make sure it complies with FCC emission levels. And then, as I mentioned, we'll do a mapping application to track all 5G cell sites. You can do it from a laptop, you can do it from your smartphone or a tablet. It's really very convenient and easy. Next slide, please. Legal framework, next slide. So there's a number of things that go into play over here for the FCC. So in 1996, there was a Clinton level a law that came into the grandpappy of it all, 1996 Telecommunication Act, and then it was updated over the years by Obama. And then most recently, under the Trump administration, it was called Carr's ruling, and then a Ninth Circuit Court which slightly modifies Carr's ruling in 2018. It was just in August of 2020. Next slide. So some critical things: shot clock limits. We have 90 days for new poles to put in order to grant a permit, or 60 days if it's an existing structure. So, for example, if you have a PSE&G pole, on Church Street or wherever it is, you have 60 days which to process it from the time the application comes in to giving a permit to start construction. So, and they do enforce this very, very rigidly, the carrier side. Next slide. Evolving laws and regulations. You see on the federal level, from 2009 to 2020, things have changed quite a bit. And on the state level, is a constantly evolving body of law, especially since it's a new law. There's going to be a lot of challenges to it. So you're going to find that the law, both on the federal and state level, constantly changes. Next slide. What we do is we're going to draft a 5G ordinance for Aberdeen. We're going to monitor updates and report to municipal agencies, and then make sure we comply with federal and state laws so we don't get sued. And I will always make sure I update the ordinance as needed to be compliant. Next slide. Monetization, something especially in a fiscally constrained environment, is very important. Next slide. So they're going to spend a lot of money to deploy this. They're going to spend $275 billion. They're expected to make $700 billion off of this in the next 10 years. So one thing that municipalities typically don't know, because of duplicity on the carrier side, is they'll come in and they'll tell you that they're a Board of Public Utility governed entity. And you think, okay, well, we can't charge them any money for it. And it's a little slippery because they do partner up with a BPU company to go ahead and start installing the poles. But Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, all private carriers. And such, you can charge them a certain amount of money for it and monetize. Now, a lot of municipalities, they aren't aware of that, and they've been losing out on the revenue from that. And that's something that I will negotiate for you. Next slide. So you get recurring annual fees on this, and it's very clearly permitted in Carr's ruling. And it was upheld most recently in the Ninth Circuit hearing. Next slide. So right-of-way agreements, franchise agreements, pole attachment agreements, all of which I've done right now for many municipalities and would like to bring that to Aberdeen. Next slide. So here's my business right now. So you keep 100% of monetization. I don't take any of it all. The way I make money, I charge $0 to Aberdeen, but the way I make my money is the carry comes with application fees. You're allowed to have an expert consultant. The MLUL makes very clear. I'm sure in Aberdeen you have engineers and also some outside consultants that the applicant pays for when they come in. And very same way as your telecommunications consultant, whenever they come in to file for a permit, it goes into Aberdeen's escrow account, and you pay me out of that what I bill for it. I've negotiated the hourly rate with the carriers so they know who I am. In fact, many ways they appreciate me being here because I know what I'm doing. I've dealt with it. So it's good for both sides. It keeps you out of hot water in terms of FCC violations. You get to monetize to the maximum level, and you don't pay me for me at all. It's entirely paid by the applicant, which is a good thing, I imagine. Next slide. So again, as I mentioned before, I'll do the 5G ordinance. I'm going to go ahead and do the master license agreement. I do all the administrative review. I'm going to do the construction drawings, review that. I'm going to do a report based on the application to the zoning officer, to the business administrator, showing whether or not it complies with the ordinance. Next slide. So this kind of wraps it up. I'm a service disabled veteran-owned business. This is from me a year ago. I was in northern Afghanistan, and it was unfortunate. I had to leave my children at the time. They were 4 and 6, so I had to miss their kindergarten years and missing teeth. So I was unhappy about being there. Obviously, I loved serving my country, but being away from family was kind of tough. But it allowed me to sever my business with the wireless carrier side. It allowed me to do this, which has always been my dream, to represent the landlords, the municipalities. So in that way, it was very fortuitous in many different ways. Next slide. And that's it. That's my presentation. And I would very happily like to hear any questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions any members of the public or council may or may have.
Okay, well, Mr. Lupo, let me first thank you for your service to our country. And we're certainly glad you're back home and safe and proceeding with your life. So thank you very much. I have, I think, an easy question, but no question is ever easy. Have municipalities, do they have the right, or has any municipality said no to have 5G in their municipalities?
Are you asking whether or not any municipalities have 5G in it? I'm sorry, I missed a little bit of your question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. No, basically, yes, you're right. The question was, has any municipality, or does a municipality have a right to say, no, we don't want 5G in our town? Or are we forced to do it, and then would look for a consultant like yourself to work with our lead team to make sure everything was right? So that's the long and short of it. Can a municipality say, no, thank you to 5G?
So the FCC is very clear about it. There is no way for prohibiting the bringing it in, or materially inhibiting it, making it prohibitively expensive to do it, or have a very, very long process. So we would immediately be sued by the carrier. So the quick answer to your question is no, you cannot. But what I'd like to do for Aberdeen is maximize the benefits. So whatever little protections the FCC does allow to the municipality, maximize the distancing between sites, have a little control about where they go, appearance to match the streetscape, things I would put into the ordinance. Again, distancing, make it as far apart as possible, prevent proliferation of new poles wherever possible, use existing infrastructure. So no, there's no way of preventing it, but there are ways of mitigating the impacts on it. As I mentioned before, the FCC health and safety reports make sure they're compliant with the health and safety exposure requirements under the FCC. Those are things we do, is manage it, but cannot prevent it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and if we were to say to you that we have a great legal team that helped us with solar, in which at that time, the installer picked up all the expenses of our legal review also, would that hold true with this?
They do place limits on the amount of money to be charged. So it's very, very clear in FCC, and it does not allow for legal review. So unfortunately, if you had, town council, or if you hire me as your telecommunications attorney, would not be permitted to charge for legal fees.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Councilman
Thank you,
Hurt?
Mayor.
Thank you, Brian. There were a couple of things that kind of caught my eye or caught my ear. You spoke about emissions, but what I didn't get, maybe I missed it, is 5G going to emanate or produce greater emissions or radioactive frequencies or whatever they are into the airwaves than 4G? Is it the same? Is 5G healthier? I wasn't quite sure where you were going with that.
No, it's just so it does everything we use. Where I'm calling you from my phone right now, has some sort of radio emission. It's just simply a different kind of emission. So 4G, if you want to picture, is a much longer wave. We'll say that the wave size is, say, maybe 5 car lengths, we'll just call it that. The new nano, which is 5G, is going to be a lot smaller. It'll be, say, maybe a length of a car versus, say, 10 cars. The FCC has stated that both the 5G, which is the nanotechnology, as well as the 4G, is safe for human exposure. But what I think my point was, the size of the area which could cover. 4G covers miles and miles, which I'm talking to right now is using 4G technology. 5G only covers about a football field apart. I think it was kind of explain that difference between the technology, but they're equally as safe according to the FCC.
Okay, and the other thing that raised a question, and Brian may be able to give us a brief answer, and we can discuss it later in detail. You spoke about fees for the township, $270 according to your presentation, per tower or per small cell site. Don't we get, Brian, do we get a fee from the carriers now for putting up the antennas?
We currently get a revenue from AT&T and T-Mobile.
Okay, because I'll be curious to know what the difference would be of what we're currently getting versus what this would end up generating. But that's something we can talk about off, later and get more details.
I would
So
be curious, how many would Aberdeen need?
25.
So that's yeah, we're looking at probably, you might get a couple hundred between all four carriers. You might get a couple hundred of these in the public right away. And I could give you a little more, I could do a heat mapping specifically for Aberdeen and send it to Brian from the circulate amongst the governing body. I certainly could do that for you. But the key thing here that's interesting is that in the instance where you have T-Mobile, AT&T paying on a tower, they're going to be occupying it right away. So it's going to be on their structure in the public right away, not on a directly municipally owned piece of property. But in terms of the question regarding I could do a projection. This is not going to be an exact count. It's based on modeling, predictive modeling, which is pretty accurate. And I could get that over to Brian to circulate amongst the governing body, as I mentioned before.
I have a question. You said that it would be put on their property, not on the municipality's property. Therefore, we wouldn't get the revenue.
No. So here's the interesting thing. And a good point. You're making a very good question. It'll be put on their structures, but it'll be in the public right away, which you manage and for which you're entitled to, irrespective of the fact if you own the land or if you own the structure or that they're attaching the small cells to, you're still entitled to get some sort of reasonable revenue from it, which again most people don't understand. Most attorneys don't understand who don't specialize in this area of practice.
So it would only go on it wouldn't go on any municipal property, because right now we do have antennas on municipal property.
Yeah,
So
and eventually that's going to correct. Yeah, all that this would be on a structure owned by Verizon probably, or Comcast, PSE&G, JCP&L, one of those public utilities. It'll be on one of their structures, and those towers you referenced will almost certainly be decommissioned over the next decade. They're going to take those towers down, and you'll lose that revenue probably within the next decade. It's 4G technology to be phasing out over the next 10 years, and then only rely on the 5G technology. So in all likelihood, you'll lose that revenue for those towers you mentioned. Not tomorrow, but in the next decade.
Deputy Mayor?
Peter, a large part of Aberdeen is a development on this side of town called the Strathmore Development. In that development, all of the telephone wires and telephone poles are in their backyards. Would some of those units be put in the backyards of some of these houses, or is it just going to be done like on a main road like Lloyd Road or Church Street where there are telephone poles?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, my sister lives in Strathmore. She's right across the street from the school. She's on Church. So she's right down the block from the volunteer fire station. So I know the area very well. What they'll do is they almost certainly won't put it in the backyards. They want strategically located across streets on the main lines of communication. So as I said, Floyd Road, Church Road. So if they don't have utility poles available on those streets, they're going to seek permits to go ahead and start putting those utility poles on these main rights of way, those main arterial roads.
All right.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, that's what would happen.
All right, thank you.
Well, Mayor, I got nothing else. I
Okay,
think it's, Peter, I appreciate the presentation for our mayor and council today. Actually, Mayor, if you're okay, are you with the presentation? Are you good with public comment? Because Mr. Perry would like to ask a question.
absolutely.
Hold on. Go ahead, Mr. Perry.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tom Perry on Cashel Speedway. Mr. Lupo, first of all, as a fellow Brothers in Arms Airborne Ranger, I too thank you for your service. Couple questions for you. First of all, following along the mayor's line of questioning whether or not Aberdeen had the right to refuse installation of 5G. Do you have any experience in or aware of any religious challenges to the installation of 5G in a community?
Did you say religious challenges?
Yes.
I know there have been lawsuits. I've heard basically the concerned people who understand that there's potential trafficking, child pornography, and other things that people would consider illicit and immoral. So I've heard about lawsuits about that. I've heard that those lawsuits were failed on the merits. I'm not exactly familiar with those, exactly the reasoning and logic of it, but I have heard about that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, those were some of the reasons that were people objected to it. But I believe that those failed, sir.
What about putting aside illicit or morality-based challenges? What if it's a challenge based upon they feel that it contravenes their religious faith? Have you have any experience with that?
No. I've never dealt with that type of objection. No.
And then to the other question concerning installation of the 5G nodes in neighborhoods or close to a house in proximity. If I don't think I clearly understood your response, but if there's a neighborhood that has no utility poles, would utility poles then be erected in that neighborhood?
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. If I wasn't clear about it earlier, yes, they will seek permits. They'll ask for sidewalk opening permits. They'll install utility poles roughly 40 to 45 feet in height, typical wood utility poles that we see in the streets, and they would then attach their antennas on top of that. So yes, that would in fact happen.
And is that part of the application process then for any variances that would be sought, so the public would have an opportunity to address those issues?
So that would be, so good question. It would be public notice. So once we pass the ordinance, we have an application, say Verizon wants to put 40 sites down. What we would do is we have, the mayor would need council resolution authorizing him to sign off on a right-of-way agreement with one of the carriers. It would list all the sites that would be there by cross street and by last longitudes, and it would be publicly noticed. I don't want to tell the council, and the mayor, the business, but that was typically how I work in other municipalities, and I believe that would also be the way it would work in Aberdeen as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lupa. Thank you, Mayor.
You're very welcome, Mr. Perry. Brian, in fairness, anybody else have their hand up or?
I'm checking right now, Mayor, but no, I don't see anybody else.
All right, well then, you let me know.
Yeah, no, nothing else at this time from anyone asking.
Very good. Okay, with that being said, I believe we can leave workshop to go to regular meeting. I thank Mr. Lupo again. I'm sure we'll be in communication with him some more. So Deputy Mayor, would you give me a resolution to leave workshop for the regular meeting?
Mr. Mayor, my fellow council members, I'd like to make a motion to move from our workshop of this evening to our regular meeting on the floor.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Perfect,
Thank you, everyone. I'll drop if that's okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting is being held in conformance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice has been given to the newspaper, and the notice of this meeting has been posted on the door of Town Hall. The next open public meeting of this council will be on March 18th, 2021. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilman Cannon,
Here.
Councilman Hirsch, Councilwoman Kelly, Councilwoman Montone,
Here.
Councilman Swindell, Deputy Mayor Martucci,
Here.
Mayor Tagliarini.
Yes, thank you very much. Now I'd like to have a moment of silence. And right along this past year, not only do we, of course, keep the men and women in the military in our minds and hearts as they protect us on foreign soil and our own soil to allow us to meet in forums like this, but we also owe a debt of gratitude to all the frontline defenders, police, fire, CERT, first aid, EMS squads, doctors, nurses, and the great folks in the labs working on this cure. The news is getting better. We're a few days away from making an announcement about vaccines, but already I've got a meeting now just late tonight about vaccines in the county. So that's the last hurdle. And we're working very diligently, but not prepared yet to make an announcement about registering our seniors. I promised I would say that way to the town manager. So we're going to keep everyone in mind, and thank everyone for doing a great job in keeping us safe. We're still going to ask you here in Aberdeen to wear a mask and wash your hands and socially distance and be smart, because that train is coming into the tunnel, and we're all very, very excited that we're on our way to getting vaccinated, all of us. So please be safe, continue to be safe, and thank you. And now I'd like to have a moment for yourself or any personal intentions that you have tonight. And at this point, I would like to use my trusty little lawn flag so that we can pledge allegiance to our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag of
of
the
the
United States of
America,
America, and
to the
to the
republic
republic
And
which
which
stands
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
liberty.
with liberty and justice for all.
all. Thank you all very much. I would like to ask any member of council at this point in time if they have any reports that they would like to talk about at this time. Okay. I see that we have with us our new chief of police, and welcome, Chief Geyer. And would you like to share a few words with us tonight?
Sure, I would. I'd just like to say that it was a heck of a first week. I learned real quick the meaning of the buck stops here. And I also learned that, you know, you're only as good as your support group. And I had a lot of support my first week. The manager, my own staff, my captains, my lieutenants, Jackie. You know, it takes everybody. My new secretary, Rose, Sherry. You know, you can't do it alone, and the work never stops coming in. So having a good support staff really helps get you through the week. But it was a good week, and I look forward to next week.
Well, we do too, and we wish you, again, much success. But we're probably a little more confident than you, but I understand the words that you used, because all of us work together so well too, and it's a team, and you're spot on. So we wish you the best in the second week, and it would be a good sign if we see you next Monday coming back. And but we have the utmost confidence in you. So thank you, and again, much luck to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Brian, anything from our manager?
Just a quick one, just to follow up on Chief Geyer on his first week, just for people and for on the record. You know, Chief Geyer is a 34-year vet with the department. He has held everything from sergeant to detective to, detective, then sergeant, and then sergeant in the traffic bureau, lieutenant of the operations division, captain of operations, and most recently our deputy chief, and now our chief, and very, very happy to make that promotion here on my first official year here. So, and again, already only 4 days in, and the chief and I have met almost daily, and everything's running very smooth, knock on wood. We don't have any issues, but it's already been a pleasure to be working with the chief and to continue to move the township and the department forward. So I wish the chief all the best on his time here, and I know we're going to do great things as our months move on. Just a quick update reminder that as of Monday, Town Hall is open to residents by appointments. So any resident that would like to come in and visit and conduct their business, they just have to call the department that they're looking to deal with, and the office will set up a time for you to come in. Already this week has been great. The different departments have already had people in. I know construction has had many more people coming by besides just doing their regular drop box, but they are available. Also, just to keep everybody updated on the there's a question about the energy aggregation that we had a conversation and had a report done by the Red Bank Borough manager. They actually just sent me the RFP to start reviewing, and next week myself and about 6 other towns will be doing a Zoom to review it together as one, and to go and to see where we're going with our next steps for that announcement. And as the weather starts getting better, I will be meeting with our DPW director to start getting potholes filled as long as our asphalt companies are open. But it looks like the weather, especially next week, looks like it's going to be nice in the 50s. And I'll be making sure that they get the trucks out to start filling potholes that we've had from the last, I think it was a total of 7 snowstorms that we had since January 1st. So we'll definitely get our guys out there to keep that going. And rather than that, Mayor, I have nothing else at this time.
Thank you, Brian. And I'll just have to say this. When we asked for reports, and I didn't say anything either, but I want the public to know that we have had budget meetings, we've had road committee meetings, we've had park meetings, and those are proceeding along very nicely as we head towards the capital portion of our budget. So I do want the public to know that we are meeting very diligently in the important areas when it comes to our residents. So we were a bit all shy there for a moment, but I assure you, all these meetings and committees are taking place. So with that said, I think we'll move to the hearing of the citizens on agenda items only, and you'll follow the same routine we've been using now. You'll indicate to Mr. Russell with a thumbs up or wave to him so he can open your mic and you can ask a question on agenda items only at this time of the meeting.
I have nothing at this time, Mayor.
Okay, and to help Anthony, because I know he has a conflict tonight, I'm going to ask permission from everyone if we can skip the minutes at the moment and the ordinance motion, and to bring Anthony in because he's so valuable on this issue of what we're doing tonight with the ordinance 1/2021. So Anthony, could you give us a quick review of what we're going to be doing tonight as a council, and the fact that we're really just following instructions from DEP, but you take it and maybe give us a quick overview of what we're doing tonight and why we're doing it.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, council members. So essentially what the council is doing and what you've done from the prior hearing is a little background. In 2006, DEP came out with some stormwater regulations. In 2011, they were updated and there were some things added that the township had to include. Now again, in 2021, they have since revised the stormwater control ordinance, which is part of the stormwater management regs. So what the DEP has recommended to the towns and the Tier A municipalities within the state is that they essentially repeal the entire section of the stormwater management, the stormwater control ordinance, and adopt the recommended stormwater control ordinance that they put out. So essentially what really the council is doing is basically following the regulations that were put forth by NJDEP. There were a few modifications from the last two rounds from 2006, 2011. I'll highlight a few of them just so the council understands essentially what's changed from the two previous stormwater control ordinances. There were a few administrative things that probably don't need to be going into, such as how many plan sets, how to be distributed. There were some definitions that were changed or modified, but essentially the biggest crux of the revisions were for the green infrastructure. And essentially what that is the townships are being asked by NJDEP through this new stormwater control ordinance. They're essentially being asked to put some pressure, I guess, in the bluntest form, put some pressure on applicants and developers to push for more of a green infrastructure, which would be considered rain gardens. They would, smaller rain gardens with native vegetation that's able to withstand and absorb a lot more of the water. Trench drains, infiltration basins, which are typically basins that you see with the sand bedding on the surface during dry weather, with the idea being that they're trying to get as much water to infiltrate into the ground instead of just holding it in a central location, such as these large detention basins that really you see throughout the town and throughout the states now. So they're trying to get away from that. They're putting the onus on the planning boards and the zoning boards to essentially encourage the boards to encourage the developers to, instead of having one centralized detention basin and location, they're trying to have the idea that the stormwater would be localized within a larger development. So you would have multiple rain gardens, you would have some drainage swales, you would have some infiltration basins with the sand bedding. And that's really essentially, in a nutshell, the biggest change in this stormwater control ordinance from prior, to the point where they actually have definitions of the green infrastructure that they spell out within that stormwater control ordinance. And what they're really trying to do is have the townships and the boards of the townships impress upon the developers to try to get creative and not just have these large open water basins for that just simply detain the water and then release it over time. One of the other definitions, for an example, that was changed, so the definition of disturbance has changed, where they've officially eliminated the mill and paving, which was a big sticking point with some of the municipalities and a lot of the engineering firms and a lot of the engineers, quite frankly, because the state was looking at mill and paving as a disturbance, where in reality you're not really hitting ground or soil, so you're simply milling up 2 inches of pavement and you're putting it back. So that was eliminated as one of the definitions. So that was actually a win for some of the towns. Let me see if I can go through if there's other changes. That was really about it as I'm kind of going through my cheat sheet here. That the biggest item was the green infrastructure. That was being implemented now by DEP.
Okay. And first of all, thank you last night for being at the planning board meeting, as the planning board motioned, agreed to move forward to the council tonight. So thank you for also spending time with the planning board last night, Anthony. I greatly appreciate that also.
No problem.
What I will do, with the permission of anyone on council, if anybody has any questions for Anthony before he has to leave for another conflict meeting, please do so now. Any questions you might have. But he did a pretty good job in explaining what it is. And
I just have a question, Mayor, if that's okay.
yes, please.
Anthony, could you could you quickly explain the bottom level of regulation? So like what is the trigger for this ordinance? So the homeowners of the town, well, I hope it's not going to affect the homeowners of the town, or it might not have my vote tonight, but you know, what level of development or disturbance is this affecting? That was chiefly my concern when it originally came here for introduction.
Okay, no, it's a good question. So essentially the stormwater control ordinance is really geared towards the commercial and the non-residential portions of the town. So any kind of development that, any mixed use development, any kind of commercial development, there's an entire separate category for residential, you know, through the RSIS standards and through some of the other stormwater management regulations. This SCO, which is the stormwater control ordinance, is essentially geared towards commercial. And two of the triggers are 1 acre of disturbance of the entire site, no matter what you're doing. You put a shovel in the ground, you disturb more than 1 acre, it's considered a major development, and you are obligated to follow these rules. Or you have a 1/4 acre of impervious that you're adding to your site. So for sake of argument, if you had a clean virgin site with trees, grass, fallow, and you put a parking lot in that exceeded a 1/4 acre, which is essentially plus or minus 10,000 square feet, you would be obligated to fulfill these regulations under the stormwater control ordinance. So it's really 1 acre of disturbance, or it's a 1/4 acre of impervious.
Okay, thank you. That seems like a very good standard, honestly, because that's not going to catch the average homeowner's deck or driveway or shed or anything, but it's going to catch basically almost every new house that's built. Maybe, depending on how big it is and how big the lot is.
Correct, depending on how big it is, correct.
Okay. Well, it'll certainly catch every two or a cul-de-sac that's built, which is the most important thing.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Anything over a 1/4 acre of impervious, you know, and impervious, for anyone who's not really sure what that, anything paved or anything that doesn't allow water to infiltrate into the ground is considered impervious.
Okay, thank you for that, Anthony. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Any other questions from council on this? No. Okay, Anthony, again, thank you so very much. And I hope you get to your next function on time. And thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, we'll go back onto the agenda and call on Councilman Hirsch for a motion for number 6.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to the mayor and the fellow council members.
Councilman, you're muted. You hit the mute button.
Oh,
I apologize. I thought I did. To the mayor and my fellow council members, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of workshop, regular and executive session of October 15th, 2020.
Second.
Councilman Cannon,
Yes.
Councilman Hirsch,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Councilwoman Montone,
Yes.
Councilman Swindell, Deputy Mayor Martucci,
Yes.
Mayor Tagliarini.
Yes, thank you very much. Moving on to 7A, ordinance number 1/2021, introduced and passed on first reading by title on February 18th, 2021, and published according to law, is now being taken up for further consideration in public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance was in the Asbury Park Press, February 23rd, 2021, will be submitted as noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted in Town Hall. And Karen, please make sure it's posted on the door. Okay, and that copies were available to the general public upon request. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the Township of Aberdeen, Monmouth County, amending Chapter 25, Land Development of the Code of Aberdeen Township, Stormwater Control.
Okay, I would like to open the meeting now to the public for remarks or comments for or against the final adoption of this ordinance. And again, please indicate to Brian Russell if you have a question or comment on it. And Brian will certainly let me know and call upon you. And
I see no one at this time, Mayor.
thank you very much, Mr. Russell. I will then call on Deputy Mayor Joe Martucci to make the motion.
For consent agenda, for resolutions.
For the actual,
The
Motion.
ordinance.
the ordinance for 121.
Okay, excuse me. Mr. Mayor and my fellow council members, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1/2021.
Second.
This ordinance will be published in the March 19th issue of the Asbury Park Press. Councilman Cannon,
Yes.
Councilman Hirsch,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Councilwoman Montone,
Yes.
Councilman Swindell, Deputy Mayor Martucci,
Yes.
Mayor Tagliarini.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to ask Councilman Cannon to, for the consent agenda, but Councilman, can you please table number 1, please, first?
The school buses?
Yes, sir.
Mayor and fellow council members, I'd like to make a motion to table resolution 2021-54.
Second.
Councilman Cannon,
Yes.
Councilman Hirsch,
Yes.
okay, Councilwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Councilwoman Montone,
Yes.
Councilman Swindell, Deputy Mayor Martucci,
Yes.
Mayor Tagliarini.
Yes, thank you very much. And Councilman Cannon, bring us home.
Hey, Robert, you're muted. Mayor and fellow council members, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda, which now consists of resolution 2021-55 only.
Second.
Councilman Cannon,
Yes.
Councilman Hirsch,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Councilwoman Montone,
Yes.
Councilman Swindell,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Martucci,
Yes.
Mayor Tagliarini.
Yes, thank you very much. And now we're up to agenda item number 9, hearing of the citizens' correspondence, petitions, new business. And again, just indicate to Brian Russell if you'd like to be recognized at this point in time.
Mr. Perry, you're good
Thank
to
you.
go.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. Still Tom Perry on the impervious Cashel cut through. Just a few questions. Is Aberdeen's Water Park part of the Aberdeen's Water District?
You mean the spray park?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't hear it, the whole thing.
It's recycles, Tom.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It recycles. So I mean, we fill it with township water, but it's not like connected, like it's not like an open fire hydrant. You know what I mean? It
Got it.
recycles the water. It's like a pool.
Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you.
Do we know yet who the members of the Senior Advisory Council are?
Yes, it's a yes and a no. We have members, but many of them have expired at the end of the year. So I'm trying to work with our the present recreation director waiting for him to give me names to submit for new membership, because they actually do have expirations on it.
What is the relationship between recreation and the Senior Advisory Council?
Oh, you know what? I think I'm talking the wrong one. That might be my fault. Because there is.
That's no worries.
Yeah, I apologize. There's a recreation commission and then the senior advisory. Mr. Perry, I'd have to check on that again tomorrow for you and then have to send you an email because I don't have the right answer then for you right now.
Okay, great, thank you. And then lastly, any updates on 171 Church Street?
No.
Mr. Cohen. Mr. Cohen still with us on that?
Yes, I just answered the question. No is the answer.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, sir. Okay, so no update on that, all right. Anything else, Mr. Perry?
Nothing other than congratulations again to Chief Guyer. Best of
Yeah,
luck.
yeah, that's good. Thank you very much. And do we see any other hands raised, Brian, or thumbs up, or?
No, Mayor, nothing else at this time either.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to ask our attorney to give us the executive council resolution.
Certainly, Mayor. Resolution authorizing the Township Council to enter into executive session. Whereas the Township Council are mindful of the right of the public to attend and witness meetings of governmental bodies at which public business is discussed and to be involved in all phases of governmental action. And whereas the Open Public Meetings Act nonetheless recognizes the authority of a public body to exclude the public from meetings in certain enumerated instances in which disclosure of matters discussed could endanger public safety, property, or other public interest, or invade individual privacy. And whereas, as authorized by the Open Public Meetings Act, be it resolved that the Township Council will meet in private session at 8:30 p.m. on March 4th, 2021, to discuss the following specific items: contractual township land personnel. Be it further resolved that the matters so discussed will be disclosed to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. And as I look at the calendar, we are so very close to the 1-year anniversary of when Aberdeen declared a state of emergency here in town because of COVID. I know it's probably was a little later in March, and maybe by the next meeting, I'll have the exact date for you. But again, I said before, hopefully we'll have an announcement in the next week or so, and we'll certainly let everyone know. And I ask you, and I please all be safe. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And of course, don't hesitate to call us if you need something between now and the next time we all get together. Good night, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us.